Today we're going to talk about the independent brands and how the market for these brands developed over the last 35 years. Just a little introduction about every watch. First of all, and myself. First of all, I'm Giovanni Prigigallo. I'm a biomedical engineer, specialized in biotech, but I've been collecting watches ever since my teenage years. So I've combined my two passions of tech, data, together with watches. And that's how every watch started. It started from a need where there's no clear market prices, and there was no platform that provided that, actually based on sales prices. And that's why we decided to create every watch to really give a reference point for anything available in the market and what's its value. So every watch is the most credible and largest watch information hub. We have more than 4 million watches transacted on the market on file. We collect data from global auction houses, marketplaces, and dealers, including past sales. So we collect from about 400 auction houses and about 350 dealers and marketplaces worldwide. And we have data going back to 1989. We use AI systems to really, it's not only about collecting the data, but also about cataloging it correctly and putting it together the right way so that people can search and we can give the best statistics we can give about watches. We provide analytics tool and market education through reports and special insights. We launched during Dubai Watch Week, so we've been live for about 11 months, but we started a company 3 years ago, so there's a lot of work behind what we do. Just a few numbers. We collect market data from over 100 countries. We see on a regular basis about 640,000 watches available in the market. We collect and we track about 250 data points that actually affect watch values and pricing in watches. This can go from, you can think about warranties and papers. You have the extract from the archives, you have the regular warranty and so on. Service papers, but also diamonds on watches, and especially for vintage watches, this is very relevant because it actually changes value. We have almost approaching 500,000 auction results, so watch sales on file from 1989 until today, so that's about 35 years of data. Again, we collect from over 750 providers worldwide, and we see a volatility of about 150,000 new watches every month, so lots of data and lots of new learnings every month. Just a little dive into what I was saying about the 250 parameters. This could be serial numbers, all the aspects of conditions of watches which really affect value, case materials, dial details, movements, complications, and everything else. We also collect some unique informations like sales rate, so and buyer's premium. So at auction, you always have a buyer's premium. Many auctions just publish the hammer price. So we collect the buyer's premium, we do the calculation. So on our platform, you will always see what actually somebody paid for the watch, so the final actual price. Just to recap the features that we offer on every watch, you can track and analyze your collection actually based on real sales prices and transaction values, so you can expect actual market pricing. We provide personalized watch alerts on pretty much anything. You can set your filters and you can look for keywords, specific price, and we'll scan the market and alert you whenever there's something that matches. We offer valuation and price guides for any watch on the platform, so while you see the market price and what somebody's asking for the watch or an upcoming watch at auction, you're able to understand if this is a good deal and if it's in a good market price. Market insights and analytics based on the broader market, so trends, which case materials are trending, which dial colors are trending, which complications, and so on. And you can also compare watches, so if you want to find the best deal, you can put them side to side and understand what works best for you. Without further ado, let's look at the independent brands and how this market developed over time. So here we have a timeline of when all these brands started, with the pioneers in the 1960s with George Daniels and Gerald Genta, which started the brand in the late 60s. Here are the first independents. In the 70s, we don't have much, but in the 80s, we have a few very important producers like Anderson Genève and Philippe Dufour, and also Chrono Swiss, which turned out to be quite a big success. And I would say in the 90s and 2000s is where we get the real creativity. Also, both George Daniels and Gerald Genta started making their best watches in the 90s. We have of the likes of Urwerk, Daniel Roth, Parmigiani, and of course Vianney Alter and F.P. Journe that created and started the brands in the 90s or late 90s, as you can see here. In the 2000s, we have very important people like Roger Smith. We have Richard Mille that started in 2001. We have the beginning of the Opus series in 2001. If anybody is not familiar with this, it's a series that Henry Winston did in collaboration with Max Busser. They started with F.P. Journe, and moving along, they brought in an independent creator to create a special watch in the platform of the Henry Winston with their own twist and take on it. Many of the top names that you see here participated in this, and they created over 10 editions over time. You also have the Bethune, Kari Voutilainen, Grubel Forze, so many important names. And of course, in the 2010s, we have Akrivia, Resens, Recep, but also Čapek. Just to give you a better visual idea of this, these are the watches that these big creators started with. So we have George Daniels with incredible pocket watches that now fetch millions at auction. We have Gerald Genta starting with his skeletons, but again, the best Gerald Gentas we see in the 90s. Anderson Genève with very complicated and amazing watches, such as this minute repeater perpetual calendar. We have Philippe Dufour also starting with this incredible pocket watch, Chrono Suisse with a regulator. Then in the 90s, of course, we have F.P. Journe with the Tourbillon Souverain. I guess we're all aware of this watch, super important in today's collecting world. We have Daniel Roth with the Tourbillon, Urwerk with their first watch, and Parmigiani and Vianney Alter. Just to give you a comparison, this is the era where all the neo-vintage watches that we love so much, like the 3940s from Patek, 3970s, were born. And while this was happening and these very classic watches were being created, these guys were creating these crazy watches. And I wanted to give this history recap before we dive into the data, because I think it's very important to understand, as they were very big pioneers in that era. And we can see that in the market, which took time to develop, and people took time to develop the taste. And I believe that consistency, especially in the market, it's what makes brands great, like François Paul-Jean, for example. Of course, in the 2000s, we have Roger Smith, we have Richard Mille with the RAM001, the Opus one, again in collaboration with Journe, which is pretty much the same as the Tourbillon Souverain, just applied to the different case and platform that Henry Winston provided. We have the Bethune with the DB1, MBNF with the HM1, and then of course we have Resens with the first prototype, Series 0, Akrivia with the AK01, and of course Recep with the RC01. So this chart shows the values, how the median value of the sales at auction of independent watchmakers developed over the last 35 years. And while there were very few sales from the 90s onwards, we can pinpoint the most important occurrences that actually started the market for many of these brands, which is very interesting. And here we can see also the sales volume, which is also a very important indication to understand how this market developed and how they grew over time. So we have in 92, the first sale of F.P. Journe at auction with that incredible pocket watch. I don't know if any one of you is aware, but Journe actually started with pocket watches, and these are so sought after today. And some sit in the Journe manufacturer, which fetched at the time $150,000, which, as you can see, was much above the average. And very complicated Parmigianis also in the early 2000s were fetching over $150,000. And this watch today can be had for, I would say, a bargain, and they're amazing watches. So we can see the contrast from, and we'll see it moving forward, with F.P. Journe that now has stellar valuation, and a brand like Parmigiani, which offered pretty much the same quality and amazing watches, but the values don't match what F.P. Journe is fetching today. In 2017, I wanted to highlight this peak, which is due to this incredible early pocket watch by George Daniels, which fetched over $4.3 million at auction. incredible, super complex watch based on the coaxial movement, which was then bought by Omega, super important. And then as well, we have in 2019, or sorry, 2021, that 2019, that beautiful work, which was an atomic mechanical control watch, which was sold by Philips for tune-up 2.9 million. So what I want to say with this is that important sales of very important watches really drive the market. And you can see, well, first of all, here we had COVID, of course, and we all know that the market grew so much after that. But look at the evolution of the sales volume in the last 5 years, for example. It's incredible. So we've gone from pretty much around 100 sales to almost 500 in just a matter of 5 years for independent watch brands. And we analyzed more than 35 brands for this specific chart. And what you can see is that as these incredible blue chip sales happen, the market grows and there's more interest, there's more watches offered at auction, and the market grows. And so we can see that actually in 2021, which was the peak year, there were 11 sales above $1 million. And of course, the market slowed down. 2024, don't mind it too much because the big sales are happening in November. There's a very important jour that's looking to fetch millions. So this chart is going to for sure raise with those auctions. But of course, it slowed down from 2021 until 2023. But those watches are very important watches. They are really very lightly affected by the market value slowing down because they're not hype pieces. They're so rare. They're incredible pieces, early journs, early Urworks, early MB&Fs. So highly collectible watches, also George Daniels, Philippe Dufour. What I want to say with this is that these sales really helped the market, and these watches are not losing their value over time. So it's really a function, the average, if we take out the outliers, looks pretty much steady. But with these outliers, the market really grows. And this is what driving interest into the market, especially. So here we can see the records, who hold the record for the top lot each year from the 90s until today. Of course, you would expect Journe to be at the top every time. But it's not so common. So you can see a lot of times Parmigiani, you can see H. Moser, you can see Grubel Forsey, Philippe Dufour, George Daniels, and most recently also Recep, which is having a great time in the market, and is producing amazing watches. So with this, what I want to highlight is that the market is very diverse. We've had, so it's not always the most known brands and the ones that we perceive as the highest value that are achieving the top record prices. And I think it's very interesting to see because the market is very diverse and we all know the brands that are on the screen. And again, to go back to the fact that these top lots really provide a lot of value for these brands can be seen through this chart. And now we dive into the brands specifically. And for Journe, I want you to look at the volume and think about the chart that we've seen before of the volume of the overall sales at auction for independent brands. And we can say confidently that Journe represents about 50% of the sales, which is a huge number. And you can see that while the pocket watch is very high, sold very high in 93 at the time for Journe, the market for Journe really started in 2004. I don't know how many of you know this story, but that's when the Vagabondage 1 was born. Journe was developing a movement for Cartier in a Tour 2 case. The collaboration fell through, and Antiquorum went to Journe and asked him for some watches for a special auction in 3 metals. And he opened his drawer, and he had these 3 beautiful watches that were finished completely. They were supposed to go to Cartier with an incredible movement with a tourbillon in the center. And he decided to call it the Vagabondage and give it to Antiquorum. So these watches were really the start of his market. And also these landmark sales, which have a story behind it and are very important, through time, really matter for brands. And you can see that Journe had a very good consistency at auction through time, and then it exploded in 2021. So what I want to say with this, and we'll see other brands, is that consistency is key, and it's really important for starting brands and independent brands to put their watches at auction. Sorry about that. To really develop the market. And we can see some other examples. The Bethune is also another brand that grew immensely over time, especially in the last few years. We know that they also started in the late 90s, the beginning of 2000. And they've had up and downs with like really important sales. But at the end of the day, the big value has been driven by today's price. And you can see they have a lot of pieces going at auction lately. And that it's really important. And I hope for them that they'll keep this up. And it's really important for their market to give this consistency, to put it in the watches in front of their eyes of collectors worldwide, which really helps the market of these brands. The moment they get off auction is the moment that the prices slow down. We can see this progression also with Kari Voutilainen, which started his journey at about $60,000. We all know that he produces incredible watches of incredible craftsmanship. And the value really exploded in time. And you can also see it with the growth in how many pieces have gone at auction and how popularized his brand became, also through collaborations with other brands, which are really important. But again, the importance of volume at auction and putting these watches out there, I believe auction houses are the best marketing for these brands. And that's what I want to highlight with this, mainly. We can also see Recep with his latest brand, Recep Recepi, but the same trend is true for Acrivia as well. Only few pieces have been sold, and there's been a gap for a few years, but they achieved incredible results recently. I believe many collectors are not selling their Receps because everybody loves it. However, I suggest him that he keeps, one way or another, putting his watches out there because it's the best marketing effort that he can do for his brand. Now we dive in to conclude in a few models. So we look into the Chronometra Resonance, which is one of the most important watches that Journe ever made. And you can see also here, while the number of pieces is very small, and you'll see that the Tourbillon Souverain is much higher than this in terms of numbers, but you can see that the volume was always steady and increased as popularity of the watch market increased during COVID, during these times. So really, I'm highlighting this again and again, but it's a common thread. The volume, it's what really drives, and it's important, and it develops the market for these brands. And we can see the same also with the Tourbillon, with also different numbers. It's a rare watch, but the numbers are pretty much the same in terms of volume. And so, the price really skyrocketed in the last few years. It's still incredibly high, so much over retail. And I believe this is achieved through putting his watches at auction over and over time, and really creating this collectors community that really participates and engages and creates the market and the desirability for the brand. And we can see that landmark sales, so $1 million sales or very high sales, create these peaks. And we're talking about median, so we're also shaving off some of the outliers here. But they create these peaks, and they really spark attention because the auction houses, to sell these pieces, produce a lot of marketing content. And again, it drives the market and the attention for such brands. Thank you so much for your attention. I would love any questions in case anyone has any.
What do you think, if there's any, do you think there's a peculiar moment in independent watchmaking, or an era rather, which is very collectible? We've seen it, it's quite a recent phenomenon. But do you think there's a specific period of time where independent watchmakers were really on the top of the game, and those are the pieces that sell for the most?
Honestly, I think you should look at the most developed markets. So maybe the Bethune, Journe, and so on. And so what you see with Journe nowadays, and there's one upcoming at auction very soon, that the early pieces of the very successful collections are the ones that are achieving stellar prices and that have higher collectability. So I believe that you can apply this to other brands that you believe in, and look for their earlier pieces, and which are usually, like if you take Jean for example, in the era he was making 50 watches a year. Now they're making about 1,000 watches a year, I believe. So those watches are so much rarer and draw so much more interest from the brands, and that's why collectors today scramble to get their hands on the first editions and the first watches by new brands and by new independents. Many of them are here in the fair, with the hope that they will be supporting a brand that will grow and they will have the most collectible pieces of these brands in the future.
Giovanni, first of all, thank you for the very insightful presentation. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Very important independent brands in this presentation. And my question is, are there sleepers out there that you've seen around that are kind of the interest is raising right now? Have you seen some data about it?
I think it comes with the new vintage era. So the 90s, more or less, 90s, early 2000. I would say Parmigiani has some very beautiful watches that don't match the value in the market today. I believe there's other cases, maybe the early Urworks, which are probably cheaper than the new ones, and could provide a lot of value. We all know MB&F as a great brand, though I don't think many people are into HM1. While it's a very bizarre and crazy watch, I think there's opportunity around these pieces, and I think if you apply the same reasoning across some other brands, you will definitely find a lot of value for money into some of these earlier pieces.
Exactly, because the thing is that with the prices skyrocketing, collectors are for sure very interested in finding what's really valuable for them in terms of style, in terms of finishing, in terms of many different aspects. And sorry, a follow-up question. The prices, sometimes you see prices, for example, on big platforms, but they are not sales prices. How do you match sales prices with offering?
So what we do at every watch is we have three different sections. One is everything that's available in the market, and those are basically asking prices by dealers or estimates by the auction houses for upcoming watches. We created a section called Dealers Archive, which is open to everyone. You just have to have a free registration, a free account with us, where you can see the latest seen date and price for a watch that's no longer in the market. So while that might not be the actual sales price, let's discount 10 to 20%, but you get an indication of what's transacting day by day, because the dealer's market is much more active every day and the auctions are seasonal. And then of course you get the validation and the trend setting with the big auctions in May and November, but also some other auctions throughout the year. We see many sales every day with the number of auctions that we have. But I believe that the most relevant piece of information is actual sales prices at the end of the day, so that the auction data, which then validates and dictate the market for the dealers and for the everyday market. And let's not forget that the dealers are the biggest buyers at auction. So that's the secret there. Absolutely, we can definitely study that, and anything that has a year-over-year jump of 2x or more in terms of volume and has good performance. We've seen this with a brand that's not an independent brand, but was back then, and is Piaget. And so in the past few years, we've really seen, past 2 years, we've really seen, I think, a 3 or 4x growth in terms of volume, and it also follows a growth in terms of average prices and value. And so we can see it with the Polo, and then the brands react and recreate the reeditions and so on. So it's a vicious cycle. Everything is connected, but I believe it starts from the sales in the market. there are no more questions, thank you so much for being here today, and enjoy beautiful sunny Milan, and thank you guys for inviting us to Milan Watch Week.